scarcity.
That was never a condition of our agreement, nor was giving hand to this bounty hunter.
Perhaps you think you're being treated unfairly?
No.
Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again here at Sleeping Comics. Today I wanted to talk about two of the kind of negative things that have come out in our industry in the past couple weeks. It is number one, that the Walmart packs, and I know this is old news to some of you, had some very, very interesting variants in them. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is some of these different stories about price manipulation in video games, but how that affects comic books. You know, I thought about doing this video in a number of different ways, especially when some of the news broke. And I watched a lot of the great commentary from fellow YouTubers. And I wanted to make sure that I could add something that I think was of value. And really, I just don't have enough expertise in it to be like, oh, you know, this is what's happening and this is what's gonna happen. But I can just only respond from a more personal, you know, what am I going to do? What do I think about it? Because I do think it's significant, at least it was for me. And it's significant because both of those stories hit right at the heart of our industry in that they're trust issues.
No trust, liar.
And I think if you undermine that, I'm not going to say like the whole thing is going to collapse or anything like that. But definitely, I think it hurts. It hurts what we're all trying to do. And so let me just talk about the first one first. So the first one was Walmart was selling 3-packs, which they've done a lot of, and they have various special variants that are only available in those packs, and that's great. I have no issue with that. But recently, I think maybe in the past, 2, 3, 4 weeks, there were Walmart packs that had incentive variants in it from the publisher, the main publisher like Marvel, which once again, I actually didn't even have any issue with that. I think if I was a store owner, maybe I would, because I, as a store owner, had to order all these, X amount of copies to get that one. So I would feel like maybe that wasn't fair, but it is what it is. The point that I thought was very interesting is that had store variants. And that I didn't understand at all. Just to be clear, a store variant, various online stores that we're familiar with, they contract artists and they make a store custom cover, and you can generally only buy it at that store, and they generally have a relatively small print run, and usually they sell out, and so when you're buying that comic, you're like, oh, maybe this is a great deal because of the scarcity. I know a lot of people are not, they don't buy store variants. And I had a year maybe where I really bought a lot of them, but recently, if you've watched this channel, I haven't been buying as many. But I think they're spectacular. Here's a example of one. Cosmic Ghost Rider destroys the Marvel Universe. This is a super spectacular one. So this is a Virgin signed 9.8. So, this should be a relatively hard one to find. From an incentive perspective, here is Ghost Rider 1, Robbie Reyes. This is a 1 in 50. So this should also be a very, very rare comic. So if it's now turning up years later in Walmart packs, that would be unfortunate. So what does it mean to me? Well, it means that what people have been saying all along is that, number one, unfortunately, the stores, when they report that there's this many comics that they're releasing, I don't know if we can trust that number. Now, once again, is it quadruple that? In other words, when they say there's 3,000 trade, there's now 12,000? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because they do have to pay for the print run, and then they would lose money potentially on the deal. But I am going to be, I was already leery of store variants, and I'm going to be additionally way more leery of store variants. And so they really are now, and they always have been, but they really are now, cover buys. that's my thought on store variance, and it's really sad, but I think that's where, until there's some other check and balance that we're aware of, and I don't know what that would be, I think we should all consider store variance, take those numbers with a grain of salt. Okay, so let's jump to the second thing, which was price manipulation. So I'm not going to really go into it. I think there's, you can do a search on Google or whatever. There's a million YouTube and articles that describe it much better than I can here. But basically, that is another piece that probably has been and in any collectible or in many markets, not even collectible markets, where there's price manipulation, pumping and dump, whatever you want to call it. And so that doesn't mean it's good, it doesn't mean it's bad, it doesn't mean anything, it just is there. So, but I do think that, from my personal opinion, how it helps or hurts me is, it hurts me because if I want to buy a comic, a Grail or something like that, and the price is being manipulated to be pushed really, really high. Of course, the one that comes to mind is that Ghost Rider 9.8 sale, the first appearance of Ghost Rider. That was, a huge outlier. I think it was like $250,000. And maybe it's legit and maybe it's not. I don't know. I think that personally, kind of live with it as it is, and then know that it's happening, so I'm understanding that the price could be manipulated and then it could drop. See, that's really where I think, is the second piece of it. So the first piece is maybe the price manipulation has pushed it so far out of reach that, I or someone else couldn't buy it. But the other part of it is the price manipulation has pushed it to a place that's not stable. And so if I buy at that point, it could crash, that's a strong term, or it could go down and I could lose a lot of money. When you look at this one, I picked this one specifically. This is Amazing Spider-Man 300, and I've talked about this book before, is that there's just simply so many of these on the census. So once again, all grades, and I've said this before, I think there's, over 20,000 blue labels. If there was someone who manipulated this book, there's just so many that I don't necessarily know. They might push a couple outliers up there, but then I still think people are going to want to sell. There's a lot of movement on this book. Then it would fall back because as people realize that was just an outlier. And that's what I'm saying is you need to be careful of that as a buyer, because you wouldn't want to buy when there was that outlier. The entire market was inflated and then it fell back and you bought during when it was inflated like that. What is kind of the conclusion there? The conclusion there is, from my perspective, is if there's an outlier at one of the large auction houses that doubles the price for some odd reason, especially when there are other sources where you could buy it for far less. See, that's another red flag in my mind. I want to be careful if I am buying that comic at that time, because the price could fall back. As a person within the comic community and a collector, there's really nothing, at least I know of, that I can do to try to prevent it. I will say one other thing, that it is good that we do have some in various, it's not necessarily can stop these two things, but we do have competitors within our marketplace that help check and balance. So an example would be, we have GPA analysis, Go Collect, Cover Price. These are pricing tools that catalog data, and they're competitors to one another, and that kind of keeps them in balance. If one were to really try to pull some shenanigans, hopefully it would come out and we could, as consumers, try to shift our dollars to somewhere else. I do think all of the other YouTubers who discussed this topic brought it to the community, people who wrote articles on it, because that is the last check and balance, is for people who have voices in the community to explain it to others, educate them, and tell people what's going on, and then we try to, as a community, move forward and make choices and try to combat negative practices. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. Take care.